Back out. Put the charge up. Put it up.
The FBI unexpectedly raided Rick Harrison's apartment and uncovered shocking evidence suggesting that he may not be as innocent as many believed. As soon as they entered the home, federal agents discovered a hidden basement filled with horrifying secrets. Inside the basement, there were no piles of gold or antique watches. Instead, they found grim and disturbing truths: a makeshift prison cell, encrypted documents, surveillance footage, and human traces. Everything pointed to one name: Rick Harrison. But is this really the truth? Or is it just a perfectly staged setup that's finally been exposed too late? The TV personality we once trusted, could he have been nothing more than a facade for a meticulously hidden crime from the very beginning? Join us in today's video as we uncover the chilling mystery that's been kept in the dark. 1. The raid on that fateful morning. According to information from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, the timing of the raid was carefully planned to minimize the risk of evidence being destroyed or suspects fleeing. Rick Harrison was subdued just 38 seconds after the front door was broken down. He was found in the master bedroom on the second floor, not fully dressed, and completely caught off guard by the presence of armed agents. At the scene, Harrison immediately refused to answer any questions, repeatedly requested to contact his lawyer, and insisted that he had no idea what was going on. However, the authorities had come prepared with a search warrant and a detailed list of targets to seize, including electronic devices, financial records, and undeclared assets. At the same time Harrison was taken into custody, 2 other individuals were also handcuffed and separated for questioning. One was a woman in her early 30s, whose identity had not yet been determined at that point. The other was an older man dressed in tactical-style clothing, including a khaki jacket, combat boots, and a small backpack containing unregistered communication equipment. Initial checks revealed that neither of them had legal residency status in the United States. Security sources suggested that these 2 were likely logistical support personnel in the network under investigation, individuals who helped Rick maintain operations that he is accused of leading. However, the most shocking development wasn't Rick Harrison's arrest, but a discovery that's now considered a turning point in the entire investigation: a metal door with no handle, cleverly concealed behind a fake bookshelf in the first-floor office. This door was not mentioned in any architectural blueprints or renovation permits that the investigation team had reviewed prior to the raid. When brought to the door, Rick claimed, "I've never seen that before." But that denial quickly lost weight when the FBI used scanning equipment and confirmed the door's lock was operated by a multi-point biometric security system, including fingerprint, retina, and thermal signature scanners, with only one user profile stored in the system: Rick Harrison himself. At the command of the raid leader, Rick was forced to place his hand on the scanner. A soft click came from the door, an unmistakable sound signaling that an undeniable truth was about to be revealed. Behind the door was a narrow, pitch-dark spiral staircase leading down to an unregistered basement, a soundproof, completely isolated area separate from the rest of the house. From that moment on, the nature of the incident shifted from a standard criminal search to a full-scale operation aimed at uncovering infrastructure linked to organized crime. Under the light of helmet-mounted flashlights, the agents discovered that the basement had been reinforced with precast concrete and intrusion-resistant steel, comparable to a small-scale military facility. According to preliminary assessments by the FBI's accompanying engineering and explosive ordnance disposal teams, the structure met electromagnetic shielding standards, featured a dedicated ventilation system, and was equipped with a centrally controlled magnetic locking mechanism, features typically found only in top-secret facilities or high-security detention cells. It was clear that this was no ordinary living space, but rather a purpose-built underground operation designed to remain completely undetected. An anonymous expert specializing in human trafficking investigations commented that a public figure like Rick Harrison owning a bunker with such characteristics was an extremely strong red flag for illegal detainment operations. In reality, facilities like this are often used as transfer points, temporary holding areas for victims, or places to handle assets of unclear origin. What the investigation team found inside the basement, including electronic equipment, encrypted documents, and several signs of prior detainment, would serve as the starting point for what would become the most significant investigation in the careers of many FBI agents present that day. After the raid concluded, the entire house was immediately sealed off, with forensic units, digital specialists, and anti-trafficking teams deployed additionally later that morning. Rick Harrison was transported to a federal detention center without being granted bail. The evidence seized, currently undergoing sorting and encryption, included dozens of storage devices, financial records, several items suspected to be evidence, and most notably, footage from the property's internal camera system, which the FBI believes will fundamentally alter the entire course of the case. 2. The underground structure and physical evidence. Immediately after discovering the hidden door leading to the basement, the FBI quickly deployed an additional team of technical specialists from the Complex Crime Scene Unit and the Human Trafficking Task Force. Although the biometric fingerprint lock registered to Rick Harrison had been bypassed, the basement door still posed several potential threats. Forensic experts, fully equipped with protective gear, biological detectors, toxic gas sensors, and radiation scanners, proceeded to access the interior, following standard FBI protocol for unknown underground structures in residential areas due to the potential presence of hazardous chemicals, holding facilities, or illegal materials. The space beneath Harrison's mansion was unlike any wine cellar, storage room, or recreation area typically found in upscale Las Vegas neighborhoods. Spanning approximately 300 square meters, nearly half the ground floor's area, the basement was divided into 3 main sections: an operations center, a storage zone, and a detention area. Every surface was lined with raw concrete, with no decorative elements or windows. Lighting came solely from fluorescent bulbs fixed directly to the steel ceiling beams, creating a cold, heavy atmosphere similar to that of a laboratory or a military data center. The operations center was laid out like a command room, where agents discovered a long row of control desks, each fitted with 2 to 4 surveillance monitors, over 16 screens operating independently in total. Some monitors displayed live feeds from cameras installed in the backyard, garage, or within the basement itself. Notably, at least 6 of the monitors were streaming footage from unidentified locations, sealed rooms with no signs suggesting they belonged to the house. According to an FBI image analysis expert, these could be surveillance feeds from other properties, possibly used to detain people illegally, or temporary storage sites indirectly registered under Harrison's name. The control desks were also outfitted with various signal encryption devices, specialized wireless routers operating on military frequencies, a standalone server with anti-hacking security measures, and notably an electronic safe embedded into the floor. Inside the safe were 12 USB drives, 5 SSD hard drives, and 2 specialized memory cards designed for espionage equipment. All this data has been sealed and sent to the Federal Digital Forensics Center for extraction and analysis. According to a senior agent on the investigation team, these devices are believed to hold more than just personal data. They're considered the brain of the entire network, housing evidence from years of operation. Across from the operations center, the storage zone was filled with rows of industrial metal shelves, each labeled with unique codes and symbols, suggesting a carefully organized classification system. Among hundreds of storage boxes, agents found over 200 outdated HDDs, mainly 1 TB and 2 TB models, wrapped in anti-static bags. Forensic specialists immediately identified this as a black data archive, a place where Harrison and his associates stored videos, documents, and images they didn't want kept on cloud platforms. What stood out was that every drive was marked with a complex encryption code. No clear labels, just handwritten tags like E419K or SLV0923. FBI decryption experts believe these codes may correspond to geographic locations, transaction dates, or victim IDs. However, full decryption will take time, as the drives are protected by AES-256 encryption and biometric security. One of the most shocking discoveries was found in the detention area. designed to resemble a temporary isolation room. The space measured approximately 15 square meters, with concrete walls layered with specialized soundproofing material. There was no natural light, no camera installed inside, but it was equipped with an independent ventilation system and a door that locked from the outside. Inside, there was only a metal bed welded securely to the floor, a plastic bucket placed next to it, believed to be the only sanitation item, and a metal chain about 1.2 meters long, bolted into the concrete wall with industrial steel fasteners. Still attached to the chain was a crumpled fabric wristband, possibly belonging to a woman or a minor. Under ultraviolet light, forensic experts detected dried blood stains in the corner of the room and several clumps of matted hair stuck to the floor. A seasoned agent present at the scene later stated during a press conference, "I've taken part in over 30 operations dismantling illegal detention facilities, but I've never seen anything built with this level of specialization." This wasn't the spontaneous act of someone out of control. This was a facility born out of a system, planned from the start with intent. The investigation team's preliminary conclusion was that the underground room was not only built to avoid detection, but also optimized for hiding people, storing data, and managing operations remotely. From a legal perspective, what was uncovered in the bunker is the clearest evidence that Rick Harrison appears to have masterminded, organized, and overseen a criminal operation. Under U.S. federal law, constructing and utilizing an unauthorized detention space is already sufficient to constitute the crime of unlawful restraint. When combined with digital evidence, including image files, financial records, and encrypted communication devices, the charges could escalate to human trafficking, money laundering conspiracy, and violations of transnational crime statutes. What makes the case even more serious is the fact that Rick Harrison, a well-known public figure with significant influence and widely regarded as a symbol of trustworthiness, was the one who owned and used such a space. According to Professor Thomas Klein, a criminal law expert at Yale University, this is a textbook example of how a public figure can exploit public trust to mask criminal operations. That basement wasn't just a crime scene, it was a reflection of the betrayal of society's trust. The inspection of the basement concluded at 3:00 p.m. that same day. The entire scene was photographed, scanned in 3D, and documented in technical detail. All physical evidence was carefully categorized into separate groups. Group A included digital data, Group B contained biological samples, and Group C comprised devices suspected of being used for confinement or surveillance. Before leaving, the technical team permanently disabled the basement's power system and installed a warning device to prevent any unauthorized access while the investigation is ongoing. What was discovered in Rick Harrison's basement was far from simply unusual. It was a clear trace of a sophisticated underground system, masked by fame and wealth. And more importantly, it represented a vital piece of the puzzle needed to complete the bigger picture of a long-concealed criminal network. From this point on, the investigation enters a new phase, identifying the origin, the individuals involved, and the full structure of the network Rick Harrison is suspected of coordinating. 3. The FBI's investigation journey. Every major investigation often begins with a small clue, a random tip-off, a brief irregularity, or a blurry photo. For Rick Harrison, the first sign that would eventually shake his entire empire didn't come from a high-profile exposé or a loud formal complaint. It all started with just one email, an odd message lost in the sea of thousands of anonymous tips the FBI receives every month. But this time, it was different. The email didn't just throw around vague accusations. It contained specific information. It was structured. And most importantly, it included a photo. The email was sent to Agent Laia Cortez, a seasoned member of the FBI office in Las Vegas. The subject line read, "Pawn Star is not what he seems." The message itself was short and disjointed, but it came with an attachment. A grainy photo showing Rick Harrison seated in a high-end bar, facing an older man with silver hair and dark sunglasses. That man wasn't unfamiliar to the FBI's database. He was Roman Zavik, a Ukrainian national wanted globally for his involvement in a human trafficking ring stretching from Eastern Europe to North America. According to records, Zavik had used over 7 fake identities, and for a decade, the FBI had been trying relentlessly to track him down. That single photo, that fleeting moment, became the initial thread that led the investigative team to start unraveling a long-concealed mystery. In the body of the email, the sender identified themselves as JM, claiming to have worked in Rick Harrison's logistics team and taken part in several paperless deliveries. JM described shipments being delivered to a private estate in the Henderson area with no invoices, no customs clearance, and guarded by armed men. The last line of the message delivered a chilling warning. "Look in the basement, and you'll see what he really does." Leah Cortez had seen her fair share of anonymous emails. Most of them were junk. But the photo featuring Zavik made it impossible for her to ignore this one. Cortez brought the email to her superiors. At first, there was hesitation. Rick Harrison was a well-known public figure, influential and deeply connected within both political and media circles. A single misstep could seriously damage the FBI's reputation. However, after 48 hours of verification, the Federal Human Trafficking Division made a decision to launch a preliminary investigation, strictly confidential. The first step was to check Rick's travel records. In theory, someone who collects antiques and frequently engages in international transactions should have an extensive travel history. But the truth was the opposite. For the past 5 years, Harrison hadn't left the United States. No international flights, no passport stamps, no records from any private airlines. Yet while Rick hadn't left the country, his company's accounts had been making frequent transfers, hundreds of thousands of dollars sent to accounts in Prague, Bangkok, and Tijuana, locations that the FBI had already flagged as global human trafficking hotspots. This inconsistency forced the investigative team to consider a theory. Rick Harrison could be using a false identity, or someone might be acting on his behalf. Either way, the method of legalizing such international funds would violate financial control laws. From there, the FBI escalated their surveillance, monitoring phone activity, tracking vehicle movements, and checking security camera footage around properties owned by Rick. And that's when a strange behavioral pattern started to emerge. Rick no longer makes frequent appearances at the Pawn Stars shop like he used to. Instead, he constantly moves between various private locations, including an abandoned warehouse in North Las Vegas, a luxury apartment in Henderson that has never been registered as occupied, and a former pawn shop that's been closed down but still sees people coming and going at night. What stands out is that Rick is always alone. These meetings only take place after 9 p.m. They last no more than 30 minutes, and the people who meet with him never arrive together. They show up individually, quietly, and then vanish just as quickly. Facial recognition analysis using artificial intelligence revealed that among those frequently seen with Rick, at least 3 individuals had previously been suspected of ties to criminal organizations in Mexico, California, and Florida. One of them, Eduardo El Puma Ramirez, had allegedly been the leader of a trafficking network smuggling women from Central America through Baja and into Nevada. Although no concrete evidence has emerged to press formal charges, the presence of such individuals at Rick Harrison's secret properties has made early suspicions more credible than ever. The next phase of the investigation shifted to the financial aspect. Based on transaction data obtained through a court order, the FBI discovered that Rick Harrison wasn't just the public face of the companies people were familiar with. In reality, he was the owner or a hidden stakeholder in at least 17 limited liability companies spread across 6 U.S. states and 3 other countries. Many of these businesses had no employees, no visible business activities, and listed addresses that turned out to be post offices or abandoned buildings. Notably, one company, Silverside Holdings, registered in the Cayman Islands, received over $3.4 million within a 16-month span from accounts linked to organizations previously investigated by the FBI for human trafficking and money laundering. At the same time, the FBI expanded their efforts to trace assets registered under Rick's name, and a mysterious name began to appear repeatedly: Eric Lane. This name had no tax records, but was listed as the owner of 4 homes and 2 commercial properties, all located near the Pawn Stars shop, and all featuring high-end security systems, but no residents. Several of the locations had undergone basement renovations, according to construction records, though no permits for underground structures had ever been filed. A major turning point came at the end of 2022 when a former employee of Rick's, Kyle Mason, decided to cooperate with investigators. Mason had been the inventory manager at the shop, but was abruptly dismissed after questioning certain late-night transactions and USB devices being passed between Rick and a few men in black suits. After being let go, Mason quietly documented license plate numbers, logged the arrival and departure times of individuals involved, and even installed a miniature camera inside the warehouse. The documentation he turned over became key evidence that enabled the FBI to formally request a court order for a full search of the primary property, later identified as a villa with a hidden basement in Henderson. From that moment on, the investigation entered its enforcement phase. A special task force was formed, combining experts in finance, cybercrime, and tactical operations. The raid plan was developed using drone footage, satellite imagery, a 3D model of the property, and schematics of its electrical and plumbing systems. The FBI knew they couldn't afford to let Rick destroy any evidence. Every detail had to be flawless. And just like previous phases, the raid was executed with precision, speed, and left no room for Rick or anyone else to hide the truth. 4. Financial network and shell companies. As the FBI delved deeper into Rick Harrison's financial dealings, they quickly realized that he was far more than just a reality TV star making money from antiques. What they encountered was a complex network of legal entities seemingly created to conceal true intentions, with a sophisticated layered structure that went well beyond what any ordinary entrepreneur would typically construct. On official records, Rick appeared to own only a handful of familiar businesses connected to his pawn shop, television ventures, and auction services. However, after tracing information through the federal financial disclosure system, investigators uncovered an additional 17 limited liability companies, LLCs, spread across states like Nevada, Arizona, and Florida, as well as in financial secrecy jurisdictions such as Panama, Singapore, and the Cayman Islands. A federal financial investigator described Rick's business setup as a maze built to obscure cash flow and deflect legal accountability. Most of these companies had no physical office locations, employed no staff, ran no public advertising, and paid no taxes like an actual operating business would. Yet, bank transaction data revealed massive amounts of money rapidly moving back and forth between these entities, averaging between 150 to 300 transactions per month. The majority of these transfers came with either no explanation or vague descriptors like consulting services, artifact shipping fees, or Package B payment. One of the most notable among these was a company called Silverside Holdings, registered in the Cayman Islands, a well-known tax haven frequently linked to international money laundering schemes. According to an analysis from the FBI's Special Financial Unit, over the span of just 16 months, Silverside Holdings received a total of $3.4 million from bank accounts located in Eastern Europe and Southeast Asia, regions previously flagged for human trafficking activity. This money was then funneled back into other US-based LLCs owned by Rick, where it was cleaned using fake invoices, internal contracts, and even transactions involving digital assets. International financial attorney Daniel Rourke, who has assisted the US government in investigating cross-border money laundering cases, described Rick's financial model as a textbook example used by high-level financial criminals. Rourke explained that setting up shell companies to launder money from illicit activities, such as human trafficking, is one of the most effective ways to obscure its origin and prevent authorities from tracing it. Once the money has passed through 3 offshore entities and returns disguised as a service contract, he said, proving a link to the original crime becomes nearly impossible without an insider or digital evidence. In addition, Rick has leveraged his media fame to legitimize large financial flows through performance contracts, licensing deals, and unverified antique transactions. In one specific case, investigators uncovered a $270,000 wire transfer from a bank account in Bangkok to a company registered under Rick's name in Arizona, labeled as a purchase for personal archaeological items. However, there were no customs records indicating that any such item had been imported into the U.S. The attached invoice, printed in both English and Thai, described the item as a 14th century antique vase, but appraisal experts confirmed that this vase had never appeared in any exhibition, auction, or inventory listing in the U.S. From an internal investigation perspective, the FBI also discovered that Rick's companies frequently engaged in cross-transactions, meaning a U.S.-based company would make a payment to another company registered under the name of a relative or associate, and then the funds would be routed through countries like the Cayman Islands or Panama before returning to the U.S. disguised as investment capital. This tactic is known as circular laundering, a method of money laundering designed to completely obscure the original source of the funds. On paper, all the transactions appear legitimate and well documented, but according to the lead financial investigator, it's essentially a paper wall used to mask activities related to human trafficking. Moreover, in another significant breakthrough, the investigation team found that Rick's shell companies frequently utilized so-called virtual service providers, entities that specialize in creating legal company profiles for clients seeking anonymity. One notable example was a firm based in Delaware, where for just $250, anyone could register a company and open a bank account without needing to be physically present. The FBI documented over 200 financial transactions between Rick and these types of entities, clearly indicating a deliberate effort to keep the operations of his system under the radar. One striking detail is that Rick didn't just hide money. He reinvested the laundered funds into real estate and stocks, posing as a venture capitalist. Financial records show at least 6 properties were acquired at low prices through auctions, then renovated using funds from foreign companies. These properties were either left vacant after being refurbished or used as receiving points for goods, including electronics, safes, surveillance equipment, and various items with unclear purposes. One property in Nevada, upon investigation, showed signs of underground tunnel construction, similar to the design found in Rick's main estate. Preliminary assessments suggest these locations might serve as temporary holding areas or transit points before the goods are distributed. Legally speaking, these actions not only violate the Federal Anti-Money Laundering Act, but could also be considered conspiracy to commit financial fraud, international account manipulation, and funding of organized criminal activities. Criminal attorney Mary Jenkins from New York stated, "The financial system Rick Harrison set up alone would be enough to take him to court. But when you add the underground tunnels, digital data, and connected personnel, this becomes a fully structured criminal operation, from funding and manpower to execution." In summary, what the FBI uncovered goes far beyond a few shady accounts or unexplained transactions. They uncovered an expansive, well-structured money laundering network built for long-term operation, capable of functioning independently and shielded by the public image of a well-known celebrity. This is Rick Harrison's most sophisticated disguise, and it's the key to proving that he's not just involved, but the central architect behind the entire criminal system currently under investigation. 5. The transformation of Rick Harrison. Before becoming the central figure in one of the most complex criminal investigations of the past decade, Rick Harrison was once the epitome of warmth, trustworthiness, and simplicity. A middle-aged man with a passion for history, sharp negotiation skills, and a natural sense of humor. After more than a decade on television with the show Pawn Stars, Rick became closely associated with traditional American values: hard work, honesty, family values, and fair business practices. However, what the FBI uncovered reflected a long, quiet transformation that gradually became tainted with darkness. According to documents gathered from former employees, television producers, and close friends, the shift in Rick Harrison's persona began in 2015, the year Pawn Stars reached its peak in popularity and revenue. By then, Rick was one of the highest-paid reality TV stars in the United States, with a broadcasting contract worth tens of millions of dollars, along with numerous licensing, advertising, and other business deals. Yet, at the very height of his fame, Rick began to distance himself from the public eye. He rarely attended public events, declined interviews, and almost completely disengaged from social media. An action that was initially explained as a means of protecting his privacy. However, signs of his psychological instability soon began to show. According to a personal assistant who worked closely with Rick from 2016 to 2018, he started to become obsessed with privacy and information control. He always carried at least 3 phones, each serving a different purpose. One for work, one for family, and one for special communications. Rick also strictly prohibited anyone from entering his office without knocking first. On one occasion, when the assistant inadvertently violated this rule, he shouted at her, "I didn't hire you to spy on me. Don't ever walk in unless you're called." In 2017, Rick required all key employees at the store to re-sign non-disclosure agreements, NDAs, but this time with special terms, forbidding any disclosure of activities outside of working hours, prohibiting discussions about unofficial business partners, and notably banning conversations about assets not related to the store. Some former employees reported that they were forced to sign the new NDA on the spot, with the immediate threat of being fired if they refused. At least 4 employees left the company during this period due to the unbearable level of control. From the outside, Rick continued to maintain his familiar image, the polite, humorous shop owner who loved history. However, those who worked closely with him noticed significant changes. He became more irritable, suspicious, and increasingly withdrew from personal relationships. By 2018, his son, Corey Harrison, began appearing less frequently on television, while his relationship with co-star Chumlee also started to deteriorate following Chumlee's personal scandal. Rick made no public comments about these events, but sources close to him revealed that he had no longer trusted anyone except himself.
Meanwhile, the show Pawn Stars, known for its authenticity and naturalness, began to undergo noticeable changes. According to a producer who had been involved in the show for 5 consecutive seasons, Rick started to intervene more and more in the content of the show. He demanded to reshoot segments if he felt he had misspoken, pressuring editors to cut scenes that he thought would harm the expert image he wanted to project. If any guest appeared too sharp or could potentially outshine Rick on television, that segment would be immediately removed. The show gradually transformed from a real pawn shop into more of a stage. According to Dr. Michelle Tran, a media psychology expert, these changes indicate that an individual is starting to lose touch with reality, living in the image world they have created for themselves. When a celebrity reaches the height of their fame, they often become consumed by the fear of being exposed, making mistakes, and losing their power. Rick Harrison may have fallen into that state, which led to the need to control everything, not just his work, but his personal life as well, she noted. The most glaring sign of this detachment was Rick's mysterious disappearance for almost the first 8 months of 2020. While most other celebrities shared their quarantine experiences, live-streamed, or participated in activities to fight the pandemic, Rick remained completely silent. No posts, no public appearances. According to a technician who was hired to repair the electrical system at Rick's home during that time, he requested the installation of thermal cameras, bulletproof glass, and double fingerprint security locks. When asked about the purpose, Rick simply replied, "Some people want to intrude. I won't let them." The technician reported that he had never seen anyone so paranoid, especially someone with a reputation like his. By the end of 2020, Rick made an unexpected return, but with a completely different demeanor, withdrawn, cold, and full of suspicion. In a podcast interview, when asked about a rumored abandoned warehouse he supposedly owned, Rick abruptly stopped the conversation and left the set. No one understood why. However, as the FBI later discovered, that warehouse was one of the locations used for illegal human trafficking, disguised as an antiques business. Rick's transformation was not just a personal shift.
It was part of a broader process that coincided with the formation and operation of an organized crime network. From 2016 to 2022, each step away from the public eye, each instance of tightening control, and each internal conflict occurred alongside the opening of more shell companies, the purchase of shady assets, or the signing of undocumented contracts. Rick wasn't changing just because of fame. He was changing to hide a deeper, darker, and far more dangerous truth. In the end, Rick Harrison's transformation serves as a powerful warning. Fame does not protect from corruption. Unusual behaviors, unexplained bursts of anger, small changes in actions, these are sometimes the first red flags, signaling that a storm is brewing. But in Rick's case, no one expected that behind the familiar smile on television was an entirely different world, one where control wasn't a sign of power, but rather a fear of being exposed. 6. The role of Pawn Stars in the concealment strategy. If the secret basement in Henderson is the underground operation center of a criminal empire, then the reality TV show Pawn Stars serves as the perfect facade to conceal the entire system. For nearly 2 decades, Pawn Stars has not only been a popular entertainment program, it has become an icon of American cable television, a model of everyday life where viewers can both learn about history and relax with thrilling bargaining sessions. However, what makes Rick Harrison's case particularly serious is the fact that a public program was manipulated and exploited to serve criminal purposes. According to an FBI investigation, Pawn Stars was not only used by Rick Harrison as a tool for personal image building, but also as a means to divert public attention, cover up money flows, and facilitate secret transactions. One of the most shocking revelations made by the investigative team in their preliminary report was the existence of fake guests, individuals posing as sellers on the show, but who were, in reality, couriers or informants for a human trafficking network. In at least 3 episodes from 2017 to 2019, the FBI confirmed that the customers who brought seemingly harmless items, such as vintage cameras, music boxes, or war memorabilia, were actually low-ranking members of the organization, assigned the task of exchanging devices, USB drives, or encrypted codes hidden inside these items. A prime example is a man with the alias DH, who appeared in an episode with a camera from the early 20th century. After reviewing the footage, experts noticed that he had secretly placed a small object into the lens compartment and handed it over to Rick after the transaction. That object, according to the FBI, was later found in a safe in the basement, an unencrypted memory card containing the personal information of 7 people who had gone missing in Eastern Europe. Dr. Elaine Redmond, a media crime analyst, believes that Rick's use of Pawn Stars as a two-way communication tool was an extremely sophisticated strategy. The show provided Rick with a rare advantage, the ability to transmit transactional signals on national airwaves without raising suspicion. A sentence, an item, or even just a glance. In the underground world, all of these can become a code, a positional marker, or a payment confirmation. According to her, this is the way that modern criminal organizations use media to conceal their activities. Not only is Pawn Stars a platform for transmitting messages, but it also provided Rick with an image that was almost immune to suspicion. As the main face of the show, Rick appeared hundreds of times in front of the camera, always friendly, knowledgeable, and responsible. That image created a shield of trust that few could easily penetrate. Every time he was questioned about rumors, Rick would simply smile and shrug. "I'm just a guy who sells used stuff." And for the vast majority of viewers, that was enough to earn their trust. Throughout the investigation, the FBI also analyzed the advertising and sponsorship contracts related to Pawn Stars. Some of the money transferred into Rick's LLCs actually came from intermediary companies with unclear origins, which were later identified as front organizations linked to human trafficking and international money laundering activities. Associating Rick Harrison with a show that was educational and family-friendly became a key strategy, allowing his partners to legitimize shady investments. While the show itself was not directly involved in criminal activities, It had turned into a covert tool in the eyes of investigators. Another crucial factor was Rick's absolute control over the content of Pawn Stars. According to 3 producers who worked on the show, Rick had the final say on all content before it aired. Episodes were edited multiple times, and guests were carefully selected, not only to protect the brand, but also to ensure that no detail could be perceived as suspicious by the public. One of the producers shared, "Rick didn't want anyone to break the script on air. Everything had to follow the script. And now we understand why." Chime from a legal perspective. Although there is no clear evidence to show that the production team was aware of the covert activities, the role of Pawn Stars in helping Rick maintain his public facade is undeniable. This was not just a television show. It had been turned into a nationwide deceptive tool. Federal attorney Mark Hidalgo remarked, "If it can be proven that a mass media product was used to serve organized crime, the severity of the case would go far beyond typical criminal charges. It's not just fraud, it's the manipulation of public opinion." In the end, it can be said that Pawn Stars was the perfect pawn in Rick Harrison's strategy. A show that not only helped him build a reputation, but also concealed criminal activities, while making any suspicions fade into familiarity. The more people trusted Rick on television, the fewer people would recognize the real Rick in real life. And this is what made the case one of the biggest shocks in the history of American media. What do you think? Is Rick Harrison a victim of a cleverly orchestrated conspiracy? Or is he truly the mastermind behind a secret criminal network that's been operating for all this time? Leave your thoughts in the comments below this video. If you believe this is a story that everyone should know, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next in-depth analysis. We will continue to monitor and update you on the case's developments. Because sometimes the truth is not always clear in the media. It's hidden in things we dare not face.